Hi and welcome. I'm Allison and you're watching Books with Allison. I am trying to read as many books as I can get my hands on this year. My goal is about 6 a month at least, and trying new genres. I'm usually stuck in the professional development category, really just expand what I've been reading. So thank you for being here. If you have a book that you want me to review or read along with you, drop it in the comments, let me know. So today we are talking about the Radium Girls. I loved this book so much. I actually read it and then put it on Facebook, and I had no idea that it was even a movie or a documentary out. So from what I gather, I hear the book obviously has so much more detail in it, and I just really enjoyed reading it. I actually read it in one day because I just got so sucked into the story, the information, the struggle that these women went through. So my top 3 takeaways was that it was just incredibly moving and powerful. It was a beautifully written storytelling. It was not just fact, and here's what happened. It was really about experiencing these women's lives and what they went through, their health, their mental health, their relationships, their marriage, their children, their families, all of it, the communities. I really loved how it really brought everything together. And it developed such a deep connection with each woman, which was really important. I thought that it was eerily similar to everything that's going on now in our healthcare, where we have clinical evidence of an issue going on, whether it's a side effect from a medication or the first thing that I think of right now is breast implant illness, which is something that's very real, but so many doctors deny that it exists because it's not in the literature. So I'm a functional medicine physician, and we have 2 types of, I will say, research: clinical, which means me, like a doctor and a patient, saying, hey, there's a problem here, this person's having a real problem, versus like research, which is double blind, placebo. What do? We take 2 groups of people and we do different things to them and see what the results are. And when we have clinical evidence, meaning 1-to-1, we tend to ignore it, tend not to listen until it's actually proven. And even when things are actually proven, we still don't listen for a very long time. And so I think that's what really resonated with me, and seeing these women being used to make products and falling extremely ill, and dying horrific deaths, and we're still in denial. The country, the doctors, the people who are making the radium were just in such an intense denial about it. We've lost our social belief in the victims of people who experience these atrocities because of advertising. And how interesting it is that newspapers would have advertisements from the radium companies saying, look, it's totally safe. And people are like, well, the newspaper said it was safe. And now we have social media, and we have the same thing going on, where one person thinks something is safe, everybody else does, or thinks something of how to be safe, then everybody follows suit. And just because it's typed up somewhere, we're not critically thinking anymore. That's just absolutely terrifying. One of the most powerful statements in the book was, radium was dangerous, it was just that nobody told the girls. And I was reading this, and my husband looked at him like, oh my God, you can't believe what's happening. Oh my gosh, you have to hear the story. Oh my gosh, this is so horrible. How come they're not doing anything for these women? And he's like, well, have they done anything yet? And I think it was like halfway through, I'm like, oh yeah, a man died, so they're willing to investigate this now, because now they think radium's bad because the man who worked in the radium lab is dead, whereas all of these women were just dropping like flies. So I thought that was just a sign of the times, something that still happens with misogyny in healthcare. So that's definitely something that is still resonating for me so much. I think one of the powerful things for me, there's so much that was powerful, but one of them was that there were so many different situations happening across the country. So in New York and Illinois and in California, but nobody knew. So girls were getting sick in these different factories, but they didn't have the communication that we have right now. And I think that if they had all known that they were all struggling with this. So much more could have been done, probably so much more quickly. Doctors would have known so much more quickly. So these girls would paint these watches and military equipment with radium, and they would lick the paintbrush to make it more pointy, so it'd be more specific. So they kept dipping radium into their mouths, and it takes a long time for radioactive substances, especially low levels, to infiltrate the body before it does harm. So these girls would go to the dentist because their teeth would be hurting or their jaw would be hurting. And dentists across the country were seeing the same thing, but nobody had related it to the radium or the factories, and no other dentists had connections with each other because either the cities were remote and there were no papers, you couldn't get something into a medical journal. You still can't for years because it has to be peer reviewed and published. So there was no connection. So my other takeaway with this is if you're struggling with something, use our connection and our connectivity to your advantage to find other people who are experiencing the same thing and get their information. Who are their doctors? Get second opinions. We have that opportunity now, especially with telemedicine. You can talk to any doctor in your state, even across state lines, and still get support. So I rate this book 10 out of 10. I love this book. It was just so incredibly powerful. And my other favorite part is that they had, the pictures of these beautiful women telling their stories and the people who were involved. And on a very personal note, it was incredibly difficult for me to read because last year in 2020, I went through a very serious health scare and spent a lot of time in the hospital and thought that was it for me. And I was in extreme pain, and I would say nowhere close to what these women were experiencing, with their jaws falling out of their mouth and picking bones out. And I can't imagine the horror and the pain of experiencing that. But knowing that you might never see your children again, this could be it, and that you might never see your husband, and is everybody going to be okay, was, it brought me to my knees and to my therapist. So it makes me feel like not alone, but it also makes me feel just very heavy and sad for everyone who is going through any type of illness and doesn't know if there is an end, and if the end is death or if the end is healing. So making the most out of the time that you have is so important with your family. And I think ironic coming off of these books written about happiness that I had just read, and then listening to these women trying to make the most out of their lives by reading and traveling and doing everything in their possible wheelhouse to care for their body, to extend their life and support their families. So read this book. Don't watch watch the documentary if you want to, but this book, I highly, highly recommend it. So thank you for tuning in today. Let me know if you read this book, what you thought about it. I'd love to hear your thoughts, and let me know what book you would like me to read next. I have quite a few left to review from February. So thank you for tuning in. Make sure you like and subscribe so you can see our next review, and we'll see you soon.